Welcome back, everybody. I'm Al Rochelle. Well, the Florida legislature's session 2017 is now in the history books, but maybe not quite. That's one of the things we're going to try to find out today from the Speaker of the Florida House, Richard Corcoran, who is also a Republican from the Land O'Lakes area. Good to see you here.
Always a pleasure to be on.
Now you've reacquainted yourselves with your 6 kids and your wife after 63 days in this session, right?
Yeah, it's been nice to get back home and relax a little bit. I almost didn't wear a tie.
Almost. Okay, you know, like it or not, and that's kind of what I'm asking about, you grabbed an awful lot of headlines this time around. We had talked before the session. You've always been very candid with us, and I think I've tried to be candid back with you. But, you know, it did seem an awful lot like this is Richard Corcoran's session and very little about Governor Scott or, quite frankly, many of the other lawmakers.
I think that part of it is as the House, I wouldn't say me, but as a House, we were very significant in driving a lot of the policy. It was us that were coming out with, hey, let's have a homestead exemption. Let's rearrange how we do educational funding. And when you drive a lot of that policy, I think you get more and more press. But I also think the Senate had a fantastic session, too. If you look at what Senator Negron in the Senate pushed, finally we have storage south of the lake. That's a huge move. Tremendous changes in higher education. I don't know, maybe it's my personality style or something. But
I don't think, were you always this sent out in front like this?
I don't know. I don't know if I'd say I'm gregarious, but
well, whatever word you want to use to describe it. So 63 days, do you think there's going to be a special session?
I do. What I say, Al, is I think there should be one, and because of that, I think there will be one. We can't, you know, when you have 71% of the voters who ask for two simple things, they want medicinal marijuana and they want to have access to it. And so if we can't get together and write out, okay, this is the medicinal marijuana according to the constitutional amendment, and this is how we're going to make sure they have access. If the elected representatives can't do it, the last thing we should do is leave it to a bureaucrat sitting behind some desk in Tallahassee who has no accountability to the voters.
But, you know, the people that voted for this amendment, and it was almost 70% of the state of Florida, they wanted something done. So how do you pass off on it and saying, well, we just couldn't come to an agreement? I mean, don't you have to come to an agreement? Isn't that what compromise, and isn't that the way lawmakers are supposed to work?
I absolutely agree, and that's my position. My position is we absolutely have to compromise it. 71% of the people said go out there and do these two simple things. We ought to be able to do that. We have, again, we have 6 to 8 weeks to get it done. And if we did have a special session, it would be one that would probably be very fast. It could be a 2-day session, go up there. We had the bills right there at the very end. The House sent back over to the Senate the last version. We had 3 hours left on the clock. Our hope was that the Senate would take it up and we could finish it that evening.
What was the hang-up? Smoking marijuana? Was that it?
No, the biggest thing is the dispensaries. You know, so our point in the House is that, again, medicinal marijuana, that was easy. I think we got to a decent compromise point with the Senate. The second part was the number of dispensaries, and the Senate wanted to cap those dispensaries to 15 per, I call them growers. We said 100, because honestly, what's the point if you're a mom and you have a child who has some sort of medical debilitation that can't get to a doctor and has to drive 4 hours? Well, that's not access. And so we wanted to make sure there was enough medicinal storefronts, so to speak, for those folks to get the care that they want. That's what they asked for. Do.
One of your colleagues, a friend of yours, Senator Jacques Latvala, said the only thing that he regretted about this session was that he didn't fight hard enough for the Senate side of things.
I don't know. I've been with Senator Latvala. I've served with Senator Latvala. I've been on a debate with Senator Latvala. The last thing I think anybody would say about Senator Latvala is he doesn't fight hard enough. In fact, I saw him late in session. He said hello, and I joked with him. I call him Moriarty, but you know, Sherlock Holmes, his nemesis was Moriarty. So I always joke and call him Moriarty because he is a tremendous adversary, no question about it.
Right. The educational reform package. This got an awful lot of buzz. Not a lot of people, at least publicly, were happy with that. Your explanation?
It's not. The people who are not happy with it are the status quo. People who are not happy with it are the union bosses. This is a classic case of the union bosses and the status quo. Everything that has been failing in education for the last 20 years against parents and teachers and students. It is the greatest pro-parent, pro-teacher, pro-student education, public education bill that we've ever passed in the history of the House. It says to teachers, it frees them up and says no longer do you have to have this VAM test score that measures whether you're a good teacher or a bad teacher. We throw it out and say no. We also say to them, if you're a highly effective teacher, regardless of test scores, you now get a pay increase of of $1,200 over the next 3 years, and up to $800 for effective. It says to parents, we're going to try to loosen up those testing scores and the pressure on those kids. Have a study that says, why do we have to have an FSA, an ACT, and SAT? Surely we can study and figure out how they could take one test and it counts for all three in terms of measurements. We're taking kids who are stuck in failure factories for the first time, some of them for 10 years, and pulling them out of those failure factories and putting them into a charter school model that's been proven across the nation to have 90% graduation rates, or 90% of them go on to college. It is transformational.
Those anti-charter people that were the ones that were making the most noise in this, because I mean, you did have some of the superintendents. I'm thinking of Havalo from Miami was one, and there were other superintendents that were against it.
No, those are two of the big ones, and I'll address one. First, the big one's the union. The union's the ones who are against charter schools. I talked to my Democratic colleagues. Obviously, Janet Cruz and I are very close, and I say that, you know, we're not anti-teachers or anti-teacher union, but the union themselves are anti-charter, anti-choice. They just want no change whatsoever. But on the superintendents, you got to follow the money, Al, and what they care about more is the money. And what I'd say to the superintendents is, go out there and stop building $25, $40 million Taj Mahal schools. Get that money and put it back into the classroom. You know what I'd like to see in the next session? Is we ought to have a constitutional amendment that says 65 or 70% of every dollar spent in the educational arena goes into the classroom, because it's not happening.
A biggest fail for the legislature this year, in your mind? Be honest.
Right now, absolutely. We did not deliver. When 71% of the people say this is what we want and we can't deliver, that's why we ought to, should, and will have a special session to fix that.
When does that call go out for a special session?
Well, either the president and myself have to agree to it, or the governor can call us into it. But the deadline is for us June 30th.
And one thing, I should have mentioned this earlier. What ticked off a lot of people was they thought, you know what? We had an entire session, and the last 3 or 4 days you got Negron and Corcoran in a room together. It was a closed door, and that's what people, because they said you're the credibility man. You want open meetings, all those kind of things. But they said the last 3 days, what happened?
That's honestly a red herring. It really is. That's the union bosses and the people who don't like what the policy is, because everything was done. You're not hearing complaints about the higher education package. You're not hearing complaints about the pay package and the pay increases. It's just the stuff they don't like. And the reality is we had the most open, transparent, accountable budget process in the history of the state. No longer could you sneak something at the last minute, because we made it that you had to file it on time. No longer did you not know what it was. Now we made you fill out a list and own that project and say, that's my project and this is why it's good. These were all first-time changes.
And now you got a short turnaround, because the session will begin right away in January, right?
Yeah, committees start in September. So
in September, wow.
Yeah.
So overall, I know you're more relaxed than you've been before, but are you very happy with what happened?
I think it was the most, for me as a Republican, I think it was the most conservative session we've ever had in the state, and I think that we accomplished transformational stuff that will make a difference in people's lives.
And last time, because they always ask that, are you running for governor?
I've told everybody I won't make that decision until March of next year, which puts me in a very, very long shot.
March of next year.
I'm going to serve out and try to be the best speaker I can.
Okay, March 1st of next year. Can we pencil it in? Get my producer to pencil it in right now. We'll come in here.
Yeah.
House Speaker Richard Corcoran, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Al.